Captain Jake Morrison stood at the large window of New Geneva Space Station and watched the stars. He had been to many places in the galaxy, but this station was special. It was where different alien races came to talk and make deals. Today was important. The humans needed new trade agreements with the powerful Viridian Empire. Jake wore his best blue uniform with gold stripes on the sleeves. He was 35 years old, tall with brown hair and green eyes. People said he was good at solving problems that seemed impossible. He had fought in 3 wars and helped make peace in 5 conflicts, but today might be his biggest challenge yet. The doors to the main hall opened with a soft sound. Jake turned around and saw her for the first time. Princess Zarathis of the Viridian Empire walked into the room like she owned the entire galaxy. She was beautiful in a way that made humans stare. Her skin was pale blue and seemed to glow with soft light. Her hair was silver and moved like water. Her eyes were deep purple and looked like they could see into a person's soul. She wore a long dress made of some material that changed colors as she moved. Behind her walked 6 guards in black armor. Everyone in the room became quiet when she entered. Even the other aliens seemed nervous around her. The Viridians were one of the oldest races in the galaxy. They had technology that seemed like magic to most other species. They could read minds, move objects without touching them, and their ships could travel faster than anything humans had ever built. Most importantly, they thought they were better than everyone else. Jake walked over to where the dinner tables were set up. Tonight, leaders from 12 different worlds would eat together and try to make deals. The human delegation sat at a table near the center. Jake took his seat next to Ambassador Helen Carter, an older woman with gray hair who had been dealing with aliens for 20 years. "Be careful tonight, Jake," Helen whispered to him. "The princess has been saying bad things about humans all week. She thinks we are too stupid to deserve good trade deals." Jake nodded but said nothing. He had heard the rumors. Princess Zarathis had told other alien leaders that humans were like children, playing with toys they did not understand. She said giving humans advanced technology was dangerous because they would probably break it or hurt themselves. The dinner began with speeches from different ambassadors. Everyone talked about peace and working together, but Jake could see the princess was not really listening. She looked bored and kept checking a small device that glowed in her hand. When it was time for the main course, servers brought food from many different worlds. Jake tried to eat the strange blue soup, but it tasted like metal. He saw the princess watching him and whispering to the alien sitting next to her. They both laughed. Finally, it was time for the princess to speak. She stood up slowly and waited for everyone to look at her. When she began to talk, her voice was clear and strong. "My friends," she said, "we gather here to discuss trade and cooperation. The Viridian Empire has always been generous in sharing our knowledge with younger races, but we must be wise about who we trust with our technology." She paused and looked directly at Jake. Some species have shown they are ready for advancement. They have proven their intelligence and wisdom over thousands of years. But others... She smiled, but it was not a kind smile. Others still struggle with basic concepts that our children learn in their first year of school. Jake felt his face get hot. He knew she was talking about humans. Around the room, other aliens began to murmur. Some looked uncomfortable, but others nodded in agreement. The princess continued. "Just yesterday, I watched human engineers try to understand a simple Viridian power cell. They poked it and prodded it like primitive beings trying to understand fire. It was almost sad to watch." Ambassador Carter put her hand on Jake's arm to keep him calm, but Jake stood up anyway. The room became very quiet. "Princess Zarathis," Jake said in a clear voice, "perhaps you would like to test that theory." The princess raised one silver eyebrow. "Excuse me?" Jake walked closer to her table. "You say humans cannot understand Viridian technology. I think you're wrong. Why don't we make a bet?" The princess laughed, and the sound was like silver bells. "A bet? How delightfully human. What did you have in mind, Captain?" Jake could feel everyone in the room watching him. This was either going to save the trade talks or destroy them completely. "Give me any piece of Viridian technology or puzzle." If I cannot solve it, humans will accept whatever trade terms you offer. No complaints, no arguments. The princess leaned forward, interested now. And if you somehow succeed? Jake took a deep breath. He was about to say something that would either make him a hero or get him thrown out of the diplomatic corps. Then you will apologize to every human in this room and admit that maybe we are not as stupid as you think. The princess stood up and walked around her table until she was face to face with Jake. Even though she was tall for a Viridian, Jake was still taller than her. But somehow she seemed to look down on him anyway. That seems hardly fair, she said. If you lose, all humans suffer. If you win, I simply say some words. Let me propose different terms. She turned to address the whole room. There is an ancient law among my people. If someone defeats a member of the royal family in a challenge of mind or skill, witnessed by representatives of other worlds, the royal must offer their hand in marriage to the victor. The room exploded in surprised voices. Aliens began talking, loudly in many different languages. Ambassador Carter looked like she was about to faint. The princess raised her hand for quiet. Of course, this law is thousands of years old. It has not been used in modern times, but if the human is so confident in his abilities, perhaps he would accept these stakes. Jake's mind raced. Marriage to an alien princess? It was crazy. It was impossible. It was also the chance to prove that humans deserved respect in the galaxy. What would the challenge be? Jake asked. The princess smiled and gestured to one of her guards. The guard brought forward a small metal box covered in strange symbols and glowing lines. It was about the size of a book and seemed to hum with energy. This is a Viridian puzzle box, the princess explained. It has been in my family for over 2,000 years. The greatest minds of our empire have tried to open it, but none have succeeded. Our scientists believe it may be impossible to solve. She held the box out to Jake. If you can open this box before the trade talks end in 3 days, I will marry you according to the ancient law. If you cannot, humans will accept reduced trade privileges for the next 10 years. Jake looked at the box. It was beautiful and seemed to pulse with its own light. He had no idea how it worked or what was inside, but he thought about all the humans back on Earth who needed these trade deals. He thought about the princess calling his people stupid children. He reached out and took the box. It was warm to the touch and felt strangely alive. I accept your challenge, Princess Zarathis, Jake said loudly so everyone could hear. May the best mind win. The princess smiled wider. Indeed, Captain Morrison. This should be very entertaining. As Jake returned to his seat, he wondered what he had just gotten himself into. Around him, aliens whispered and pointed. Some looked excited. Others looked worried. Ambassador Carter shook her head like she could not believe what had just happened. Jake held the puzzle box in his hands and felt its strange warmth. Somewhere in this small device was either his future wife or the end of his career. He had 3 days to find out which one it would be. Jake spent the first night in his quarters staring at the puzzle box. He turned it over and over in his hands, looking for any clue about how to open it. The metal was smooth and warm, covered with symbols that seemed to move when he was not looking directly at them. Sometimes the box hummed softly, and sometimes it was completely quiet. He tried everything he could think of. He pressed different symbols in different orders. He spoke to it in English, then in the few Viridian words. He knew. He even tried singing to it, thinking maybe it responded to sound. Nothing worked. By morning, Jake felt tired and frustrated. He went to the station's library and asked for any information about Viridian puzzle boxes. The computer showed him hundreds of articles, but they were all written in languages he could not read or use scientific terms he did not understand. Ambassador Carter found him there at lunchtime, surrounded by books and data tablets. Jake, you need to eat something, she said, sitting down next to him. You look terrible. Jake rubbed his eyes. Helen, I think I made a big mistake. This thing might really be impossible to solve. Helen picked up the box and examined it. Maybe, but I have been watching the princess since yesterday. She seems worried about something. If she was completely sure you would fail, why would she look nervous? Jake had not thought about that. He took the box back and held it in his hands. "What do you think is inside?" "I don't know," Helen said. "But I talked to some of the other alien ambassadors this morning. They say this challenge has gotten attention all over the galaxy. Everyone is watching to see what happens." That afternoon, Jake decided to try a different approach. Instead of trying to solve the puzzle like a computer, he would try to think like a human. He went to the station's workshop and found some basic tools. First, he examined the box very carefully with a magnifying glass. The symbols were not just carved into the metal, they were part of the metal itself, like they had grown there. Some of the lines connected to other lines in patterns that looked almost like circuits. Jake had grown up on a farm before joining the space fleet. His grandfather had been a mechanic who could fix anything with his hands and a few simple tools. His grandfather always said that every machine had a personality, and you had to understand what it wanted before you could make it work. Jake closed his eyes and held the box in both hands. He tried to feel what it wanted. The humming seemed to get stronger when he held it gently and weaker when he gripped it tightly. Maybe it did not want to be forced. He noticed something else. The symbols seemed to glow brighter when he felt calm, and dimmer when he felt frustrated or angry. It was like the box could sense his emotions. On the second day, Jake had an idea. What if this was not really a puzzle that needed to be solved with logic? What if it was more like a test of character or feeling? He remembered stories his grandmother used to tell him about old Earth legends. Magic boxes that only opened for people who were pure of heart, or brave, or kind. Maybe Viridian technology was not so different from human imagination. Jake sat quietly with the box for hours, trying to empty his mind of all thoughts about winning or losing. He thought about why he had really accepted the challenge. Yes, he wanted to help his people get better trade deals, but he also wanted to prove that humans had value, that they deserved respect. As he sat there thinking, something strange happened. The symbols on the box began to change. They moved slowly, like they were rearranging themselves into new patterns. Jake tried not to get excited and kept his mind calm. One by one, the symbols began to line up in rows. Jake realized they were not random at all. They were telling a story. The pictures showed Viridians from long ago, but they looked different from the ones he knew. These ancient Viridians looked more like humans. The story showed these early Viridians struggling to survive on a harsh world. They had to work together, help each other, and use creative thinking to overcome problems. They looked scared sometimes and sad and happy when they succeeded. They looked like real people with real emotions. Modern Viridians always seemed cold and perfect, like they never felt doubt or fear. But the story in the box showed that their ancestors had been just as confused and frightened as humans sometimes were. Jake understood now. The box was not testing his intelligence or his knowledge of Viridian technology. It was testing whether he could understand that all thinking beings, no matter how advanced they became, started from the same place of uncertainty and hope. On the third morning, Jake woke up with the box in his hands. He had fallen asleep holding it, and now it felt different. Warmer, somehow more alive. The symbols were still moving, but now they were moving faster, spinning and dancing across the surface. Jake stood up and walked to the window. The stars looked beautiful in the darkness of space. Somewhere out there was Earth, where billions of humans were living their lives, falling in love, raising children, dreaming of better futures. And somewhere else was the Viridian homeworld, where Princess Zarathis had grown up believing she was better than everyone else. But maybe she was not so different from him after all. Maybe she was also afraid sometimes, also uncertain about her place in the universe. Jake held the box up to the starlight and whispered, "I understand." The box suddenly became very warm in his hands. All the symbols stopped moving and aligned, themselves in perfect rows. There was a soft click, and the top of the box opened. Inside was a small crystal that glowed with soft blue light. But more important than the crystal were the words that appeared in the air above it, written in letters that Jake could somehow read even though they were in an alien language. The words said, "To understand others, first understand yourself. To lead others, first learn to follow. To judge others, first accept your own flaws. Wisdom comes not from knowledge, but from knowing that you do not know everything. Jake smiled. His grandfather would have liked those words. He closed the box carefully and got dressed in his formal uniform. Today was the last day of the trade talks, and he had a promise to keep. When Jake entered the main hall, everyone turned to look at him. Princess Zarathis sat at her table, looking calm and beautiful, as always. But Jake could see something in her purple eyes that had not been there before. Uncertainty. Jake walked to the center of the room and held up the puzzle box for everyone to see. Princess Zarathis, he said in a clear voice, I believe I have something that belongs to you. He pressed the symbols in the right order and the box opened again. The crystal inside glowed brighter, and the words appeared in the air for everyone to read. The room was completely silent. Princess Zarathis stood up slowly, her face pale. She walked over to Jake and looked down at the open box. This is impossible, she whispered. Our greatest scholars have tried for centuries to open this box. Jake looked into her purple eyes. Maybe they were trying too hard to be smart, and not hard enough to be wise. The princess reached out and touched the crystal. As soon as her finger made contact, new words appeared in the air. These words told the full story of the ancient Viridians, including things that had been forgotten or hidden from the modern empire. The story showed that the Viridians had once been very much like humans, emotional, creative, and sometimes chaotic. They had developed their advanced technology not through genetic superiority, but through the same trial and error, cooperation, and determination that humans used. Over time, the Viridians had convinced themselves that their success came from being naturally better than other races. They had forgotten that their ancestors had once been just as uncertain and struggling as any young species. Princess Zarathis read the words with growing shock. Everything she had been taught about her people's natural superiority was wrong. The box was not just a puzzle. It was a history lesson that her own people had failed to learn. She looked up at Jake with new respect in her eyes. You have done something remarkable, Captain Morrison. You have reminded us of who we used to be. Jake nodded. And now, according to the ancient law you mentioned, I believe you owe me something. The princess straightened her shoulders. Even though she looked shaken by what she had learned, she was still a member of the royal family. Yes, the law is clear. I must honor my word. She turned to address the room full of ambassadors and alien dignitaries. Witnesses of many worlds, I have been defeated in fair challenge by Captain Jake Morrison of Earth. According to the ancient laws of my people, I am bound to offer him my hand in marriage. The room exploded in surprised voices again. But this time they sounded more excited than shocked. This was the kind of story that would be told throughout the galaxy for generations. Princess Zarathis turned back to Jake. Do you accept, Captain Morrison? Jake looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Behind the arrogance and the perfect beauty, he could see a person who was just as confused and uncertain as anyone else. Someone who had spent her whole life trying to live up to impossible expectations. I accept, Princess Zarathis, Jake said, but I have one condition. The princess raised an eyebrow. You are hardly in a position to make demands. Jake smiled. I want you to call me Jake, and I would like to call you by your real name, not your title. For the first time since he had met her, the princess smiled a real smile. My name is Zara, just Zara. As the wedding preparations began, the wedding ceremony took place 3 days later in the main hall of New Geneva Station. It was unlike anything Jake had ever imagined. Viridian traditions mixed with human customs, while representatives from dozens of alien worlds watched. Zara wore a dress that seemed to be made of starlight itself, while Jake wore his dress uniform with new golden cords that marked him as a member of the Viridian royal family. The ceremony was beautiful, but Jake could feel the tension in the air. Many of the Viridian guests looked unhappy about their princess marrying a human. On the human side, some diplomats whispered that Jake was getting in over his head. After the ceremony, Jake and Zara were given quarters together on the station for a traditional bonding period. Viridian law required them to spend 30 days getting to know each other before they could return to their normal duties. The first week was awkward. Zara spoke to Jake politely, but kept her distance. She spent most of her time reading reports from her homeworld or practicing Viridian meditation. Jake tried to make conversation, but Zara answered with short, formal responses. Jake felt like he was living with a beautiful statue instead of a wife. He began to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. Everything changed during the second week. Jake was in their shared living area, listening to music from Earth on his personal player. It was an old jazz recording his grandfather had loved, a saxophone playing a slow, sad melody with a piano backing it up. Zara came out of her bedroom and stopped when she heard the music. She tilted her head like she was trying to understand something. "What is that sound?" she asked. "Music," Jake said. "Jazz music from Earth. Would you like to hear more?" Zara sat down carefully on the edge of a chair. Viridian music follows mathematical patterns. Each note is calculated to create perfect harmony. But this seems random. Jake smiled. "It's not random, it's improvised. The musicians are making it up as they go along, but they follow certain rules and feelings." He played another song, this one with a trumpet taking the lead. The music was lively and complex, with each instrument doing something different but somehow fitting together perfectly. Zara listened with growing fascination. How do they know what the others will play if they are making it up? They listen to each other, Jake explained. They feel the music and respond to what they hear. It's like a conversation, but with instruments instead of words. Over the next few days, Jake introduced Zara to more human culture. He showed her paintings by artists who painted what they felt instead of what they saw. He read her poetry that did not rhyme or follow patterns but still somehow made sense. He taught her card games where luck was just as important as skill. First, Zara was confused by all of it. Viridian art was based on mathematical perfection. Their poetry followed strict rules. Their games were tests of pure intelligence. The idea of creating something beautiful without planning it perfectly seemed impossible to her. But slowly, she began to understand. When Jake showed her a painting of a sunset that looked nothing like a real sunset, but somehow captured the feeling of watching the sun go down, she stared at it for a long time. "This artist was not trying to show what a sunset looks like," she said finally. "No," Jake agreed. "He was trying to show what a sunset feels like." Zara nodded slowly. "We have lost something, haven't we? My people, I mean. We became so focused on being perfect that we stopped feeling anything." In return, Zara began to share her own world with Jake. She taught him about Viridian history, the real history that the puzzle box had revealed. She showed him how to meditate in the Viridian style, focusing his mind until he could almost sense the thoughts of others. She also told him about the pressure she felt as a princess. Every day of her life had been planned and controlled. She had been taught that showing emotion was a sign of weakness, that making mistakes was shameful, that she must always be better than everyone around her. "I have never had a friend," she admitted one evening as they sat watching the stars through the large window. "Viridian royalty does not have friends. We have advisors, guards, servants, and subjects, but never equals who care about us just because of who we are." Jake reached over and took her hand. Her skin was cool and smooth, but it warmed under his touch. "Well, now you have me." Zara looked at their joined hands with wonder. "Is this what humans call affection?" "It's a start," Jake said gently. Their peaceful time together was interrupted during the third week when alarms began sounding throughout the station. Jake and Zara ran to the command center where they found chaos. A group of ships had attacked the outer defenses, and armed boarders were trying to fight their way into the station. Captain Lisa Wong, the station commander, was trying to coordinate the defense when she saw Jake and Zara arrive. "Captain Morrison, thank God you're here," she said. "We're being attacked by the hegemony. They're some kind of anti-alien terrorist group. They want to stop human-alien cooperation." Jake looked at the tactical display. The attackers had breached the outer hull in 3 places and were fighting their way toward the main reactor. If they reached it, they could destroy the entire station and everyone on it. How many security troops do we have? Jake asked. Not enough, Captain Wong said grimly. Most of our forces are trying to stop the boarders on Deck 7, but another group is heading for the reactor through the maintenance tunnels. Jake studied the station schematics. The terrorists were using a smart strategy, hitting multiple targets at once to spread the defenders too thin. But there might be a way to stop them if he could coordinate the response properly. Zara, he said, turning to his wife, can you use your telepathic abilities to communicate with all the security teams at once? Zara nodded. Yes, but I would need to link with someone who understands military tactics. The security teams would need to receive clear orders, not just random thoughts. Jake understood immediately. Link with me. I'll provide the tactical knowledge, and you can send the orders directly to everyone who needs them. Zara looked uncertain. Jake, telepathic linking is very intimate. You would feel everything I feel, think everything I think. Are you sure? Do it, Jake said without hesitation. Zara placed her hands on either side of Jake's head and closed her eyes. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Jake felt a strange tingling sensation, like electricity running through his brain. Suddenly, he could sense Zara's thoughts as if they were his own. He could feel her worry, her determination, and underneath it all, a growing warmth that she felt when she looked at him. At the same time, she could access his military training, his knowledge of tactics and strategy. Together, they reached out to every security officer on the station. Jake provided the plan, which teams should move where, how to coordinate their attacks, when to advance and when to fall back. Zara transmitted the orders instantly to dozens of minds at once. The effect was immediate. Instead of fighting as separate groups, the security teams began moving like parts of a single organism. They surrounded the terrorist groups and cut off their escape routes. Within an hour, the attack was over. When Zara broke the telepathic link, Jake felt strangely empty, like part of himself had been taken away. He looked at Zara and saw the same feeling in her eyes. That was, Zara began, then stopped. She seemed to be searching for words. Amazing, Jake finished. I never knew that two people could be so connected. Captain Wong and the other station. Officers were staring at them with awe. I've never seen anything like that, Wong said. You two worked together like you had been partners for years. Later that night, Jake and Zara sat together in their quarters, both feeling changed by what they had experienced. During the mind link, they had not just shared thoughts, they had shared feelings, memories, and something deeper. Jake, Zara said quietly, when I was in your mind, I felt something I have never felt before. What was that? Safety. Peace. Like I could be myself without having to pretend to be perfect all the time. She turned to look at him. Is that what humans call love? Jake felt his heart skip a beat. During the link, he had felt Zara's loneliness, her fear of never being good enough, her desperate wish to be accepted for who she really was. He had also felt her growing affection for him, warm and bright like sunlight. I think it might be, he said. I know I felt something similar when I was connected to your mind, like I had found something I didn't even know I was looking for. Zara moved closer to him on the couch. My people will say that I am being corrupted by human emotions, that I am becoming weak and unprincipled. What do you think? Zara smiled, and for the first time, it was completely natural and unguarded. I think they are wrong. I think I am becoming myself for the first time in my life. She reached out and touched Jake's face gently. Thank you for showing me that it is possible to be strong and gentle at the same time, to be intelligent and emotional, to be perfect and flawed. Jake leaned into her touch. Thank you for showing me that love doesn't have to make sense to be real. As they sat together watching the stars, both Jake and Zara realized that what had started as a punishment had become something neither of them had expected. They had found not just a partner, but a piece of themselves they had never known was missing. But outside their peaceful quarters, forces were already moving that would test their new bond in ways they could not imagine. The galaxy. 6 months after their wedding, Jake and Zara traveled to the Viridian homeworld for the first time as a married couple. Jake had expected to be nervous about visiting an alien planet, but he was not prepared for what he actually found there. The Viridian capital city was beautiful beyond imagination. Tall towers made of crystal and metal reached toward the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float in the air. Gardens full of plants that glowed with their own light lined the streets. Everything was perfect, clean, and ordered. But as Jake walked through the city with Zara, he noticed something troubling. The Viridians they met were polite but cold. They looked at Jake like he was an interesting specimen in a zoo. Even worse, they looked at Zara with disapproval, as if she had done something shameful by marrying him. "Why do your people seem so unhappy?" Jake asked Zara as they walked through the royal palace. Zara sighed. "Because they are afraid. For 1,000 years we have told ourselves that we are superior to all other races. Your very existence here challenges that belief." The royal palace was even more impressive than the city. Rooms with ceilings so high that clouds formed near the top. Walls that showed moving pictures of Viridian history. Furniture that seemed to be made of solidified light. But Jake noticed that everything was also very quiet. There were no children playing, no people laughing or talking loudly. Everyone moved slowly and spoke in whispers. It felt more like a museum than a home. Zara's uncle, General Karethval, was waiting for them in the throne room. He was tall even for a Viridian, with silver hair and cold blue eyes. When he looked at Jake, his expression was full of disgust. "So?" the general said in perfect English. "This is the human who has corrupted our princess." "Uncle," Zara said, firmly, "you will show my husband the respect due to a member of the royal family." General Karethval laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Member of the royal family? This creature is barely more intelligent than the animals we keep as pets. The fact that you have bound yourself to it proves that human influence has damaged your mind." Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. "General, I understand that my marriage to Zara is unusual, but we have learned to work together, and our cooperation has already helped save lives." "Cooperation?" the general spat. "A pretty word for contamination. Do you know what your cooperation has cost us, human? Other races are beginning to question Viridian superiority. They think that if a human can marry into our royal family, perhaps we are not as advanced as we claim." Over the following days, Jake began to understand the real problem. The Viridian Empire was built on the idea that they were naturally better than everyone else. This belief justified their control over vast territories and their position as leaders in galactic politics. If other races realized that Viridians were not actually superior, the entire empire might collapse. General Karethval was the leader of a faction called the Purists. They believed that any contact with inferior races would weaken Viridian genetic perfection. They wanted to end all cooperation with humans and other young species. "The general has been spreading lies about us," Zara told Jake one evening in their private quarters. "He claims that I have become mentally unstable due to human influence. Some members of the Royal Council are beginning to believe him." Jake looked out the window at the perfect city below. "Zara, can I ask you something? When was the last time your people invented something truly new?" Zara thought for a moment. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when did Viridians last make a breakthrough, discovery, or create something that had never existed before?" Zara was quiet for a long time. I cannot remember. Our technology has been the same for centuries. We improve existing devices, but we do not create new ones." Jake nodded. "That's what I thought. Your people have become so focused on being perfect that they stopped trying to grow or change. Meanwhile, humans and other young races are constantly experimenting and learning new things." The next day, Jake made a proposal that shocked everyone. He stood before the Viridian Royal Council and suggested a complete cultural exchange program. Humans and Viridians would live and work together, sharing not just technology, but ways of thinking. "Impossible," General Karethval said immediately. "Human chaos would destroy our ordered society." "Or," Jake said calmly, "it might help your society learn to grow again." When Zara and I linked our minds during the attack on New Geneva, We accomplished more together than either of us could have alone. What if that cooperation could be expanded? The council members looked uncertain. Some seemed interested in Jake's idea, while others looked horrified. Jake continued, I propose that we start small. Let a group of human engineers work with Viridian, scientists on a joint project. Let Viridian artists collaborate with human musicians and painters. See what happens when different ways of thinking come together. This is madness, the general said, standing up angrily. Princess Zarathis, surely you cannot support this insane proposal. Zara stood up beside Jake. Actually, Uncle, I do support it. Jake is right. We have become stagnant. We need new perspectives if we want to continue growing as a civilization. The argument that followed split the Royal Council in half. Some members supported the exchange program, while others sided with General Karethval. The debate became so heated that the session had to be ended early. That night, Jake woke up to find Zara gone from their bed. He searched the palace and finally found her in the garden sitting by a fountain and crying. Zara, what's wrong? He asked, sitting down beside her. I have ruined everything, she said through her tears. My uncle is talking about having our marriage annulled. He says I am unfit to rule because I have been contaminated by human emotions. Jake put his arms around her. You haven't ruined anything. You've opened people's minds to new possibilities. But at what cost? Zara leaned against him. If the council decides I am mentally incompetent, I will lose my right to inherit the throne. The general will become regent, and he will end all cooperation with humans. Jake held her tighter. Then we'll have to prove that cooperation makes us stronger, not weaker. The next morning brought terrible news. During the night, someone had broken into the palace archives and stolen historical records. Security footage showed figures in dark clothing, but their faces were hidden. This is clearly the work of human agents, General Karethval announced to the council. They are trying to steal our secrets and use them against us. But Jake had a different theory. He and Zara investigated the crime scene and found something the security teams had missed. A small device that could record and copy data files. It was Viridian technology, not human. Someone wanted to make it look like humans stole those records, Jake told Zara. But why? Zara examined the device more closely. Jake, this isn't just any data recorder. It's a military model, used only by high-ranking officers. They looked at each other with growing understanding. Your uncle, Jake said. That afternoon, they received more bad news. The stolen records had been released to the public, but they had been edited to make it look like humans were planning to invade the Viridian Empire. The false documents showed detailed plans for taking over Viridian colonies and enslaving the population. Riots broke out in several cities. Angry crowds demanded that Jake be arrested and executed as a spy. General Karethval called for an emergency session of the council to discuss ending all relations with humanity. This has gone too far, Zara said as they watched news reports of the riots. My uncle is willing to destroy everything to maintain his vision of Viridian purity. Jake felt helpless as he watched Viridian citizens burning human flags and calling for war. Everything he and Zara had worked for was falling apart. That evening, General Karethval came to their quarters with a squad of soldiers. Captain Morrison, he said formally, you are under arrest for espionage and treason against the Viridian Empire. Uncle, you cannot do this, Zara protested. Jake is innocent. I am afraid the evidence says otherwise, the general replied coldly. As for you, Princess, the Royal Council has voted to have you examined by our best psychiatrists. If they determine that human influence has damaged your mind, your marriage will be annulled and you will be removed from the line of succession. The soldiers placed restraints on Jake's wrists. He looked into Zara's eyes. Remember what we learned about working together, he said quietly. Trust in that. Zara nodded, tears streaming down her face. I will find a way to prove your innocence. I know you will, Jake said as the soldiers led him away. General Karethval smiled as he watched Jake being taken to prison. Do not waste your energy, Princess. By tomorrow, the council will vote to execute your husband as an enemy agent. After that, we can begin the process of cleansing your mind of human contamination. But the general had made one mistake. He had underestimated both Jake's resourcefulness and Zara's determination. As Jake was locked in a cell deep beneath the palace, and Zara was confined to her quarters under guard, both of them were already planning their next move. The real battle for the future of human-Viridian relations was about to begin. Jake spent his first night in prison planning his escape. The cell was made of energy fields that would shock him if he touched them, but the Viridians had made one mistake. They had given him a cell designed to hold Viridians, not humans. Viridians relied on their advanced technology for everything. But Jake had grown up fixing broken equipment with simple tools and creativity. While his guards slept, he used a metal button from his uniform and a piece of wire from his belt to short-circuit the energy field generator. The escape took him 3 hours of careful work. When the field finally failed, Jake slipped out of his cell and began making his way through the underground tunnels beneath the palace. Meanwhile, Zara was conducting her own investigation. Confined to her quarters but not completely helpless, she used her telepathic abilities to contact loyal servants throughout the palace. Piece by piece, she began to uncover the truth about her uncle's conspiracy. The stolen historical records were real, but they told a different story than the edited versions that had been released to the public. The original documents revealed that General Korethval had been systematically hiding evidence of Viridian stagnation for decades. He had also been secretly eliminating scientists and scholars who questioned the Empire's supposed superiority. More shocking, Zara discovered that her uncle had been planning to overthrow her father, the Emperor, and take control of the Empire himself. The marriage to Jake had simply provided him with a convenient excuse to move against the royal family. As dawn broke over the capital city, Jake reached the palace archives through the maintenance tunnels. He had a plan, but he needed access to the original historical records to prove his innocence and expose the general's lies. Using techniques he had learned from the puzzle box, Jake approached the archive security system not as a computer to be hacked, but as a puzzle to be understood. The Viridian system was designed to recognize authorized users through telepathic patterns, but Jake had learned something about Viridian technology during his months with Zara. He closed his eyes and tried to remember the feeling of being linked with Zara's mind. Slowly, carefully, he projected thoughts of peace and truth toward the security system. To his surprise, it worked. The archive doors opened, recognizing him as someone who belonged. Inside the archives, Jake found more than just the stolen records. He discovered centuries of hidden documents that painted a very different picture of Viridian history. The Empire had not achieved greatness through genetic superiority, but through conquest and oppression of other races. Many of their greatest technological advances had actually been stolen from the civilizations they had destroyed. Even more damaging, Jake found evidence that the modern Viridian genetic modifications had actually made them less creative and adaptable over time. In their quest for perfection, they had bred out the very qualities that had made their ancestors great. As Jake was copying the evidence, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. General Korethval had discovered his escape and was mobilizing the entire military to find him. But Zara was ready. Using her royal authority, she called for an emergency session of the High Council, not the smaller royal council that her uncle controlled, but the ancient governing body that included representatives from every level of Viridian society. When General Korethval arrived at the council chamber expecting to find Jake's execution being planned, he instead found himself facing formal charges of treason, conspiracy, and historical falsification. "This is impossible," the general said, his calm mask finally slipping. "The princess is obviously suffering from human-induced mental instability. Her accusations are the product of a diseased mind." But Zara was not alone. During the night, she had contacted progressive Viridian scientists, historians, and artists who had secretly questioned the Empire's stagnation. They had been waiting for someone with the authority to challenge the established order. Dr. Vexithera, the Empire's leading xenobiologist, stood up to address the council. "Honored members, I have spent years studying the genetic modifications that make us pure Viridians. I must report that these modifications have actually weakened us. We have lost the genetic diversity that allows for adaptation and growth. Professor Zinkalar, an expert in ancient history, presented evidence that many of the Empire's greatest achievements had been accomplished through cooperation with other races, not domination over them. We have rewritten our own history to support a lie about our superiority. As the testimony continued, General Korathval grew more and more desperate. "These are lies spread by human sympathizers," he shouted. "Can you not see that the alien contamination has spread throughout our society?" That was when Jake emerged from the shadows at the back of the chamber. He was dirty and tired from his night in the tunnels, but he carried a data crystal containing all the evidence he had gathered. "General," Jake said calmly, "would you like to explain why your personal access codes were used to edit the historical records that you claim humans stole?" The general's face went pale. "Impossible. You could not have accessed the archives." Jake smiled. "You're right. I could not have accessed them using technology. But I accessed them using understanding. The same understanding that allowed me to open the puzzle box that stumped your best scholars." He activated the data crystal, and holographic displays filled the chamber with the real historical records. The evidence was overwhelming. The general had been manipulating information for decades, hiding the truth about Viridian stagnation while planning his own rise to power. Faced with undeniable proof, General Korathval made one last desperate move. He drew an energy weapon and pointed it at Jake. "If you will not see reason, then I will remove the source of contamination myself." But he had forgotten about Zara. In the months since their marriage, she had learned to combine Viridian telepathic abilities with human tactical thinking. Before the general could fire, she reached into his mind and disrupted his motor control. The weapon fell from his paralyzed hand. "Uncle," Zara said sadly, "you have forgotten the most important lesson of our ancestors. True strength comes from working together, not from standing alone." The High Council voted unanimously to strip General Korathval of his rank and exile him from the Empire. More importantly, they voted to begin the cultural exchange program that Jake had proposed. But the real victory came 6 months later, when the first joint human Viridian projects began producing results that neither species could have achieved alone. Human creativity combined with Viridian precision led to breakthroughs in energy production, space travel, and medical technology. Viridian logic enhanced with human intuition solved problems that had puzzled scientists for generations. Jake and Zara became the directors of the new Interspecies Cooperation Institute, established on a space station built jointly by human and Viridian engineers. The station itself was a work of art, combining the mathematical beauty of Viridian architecture with the organic creativity of human design. 5 years after their wedding, Jake stood in the observation lounge of the Institute and watched children from dozens of different species playing together in the station's central park. Human children chased Viridian youngsters in games of tag, while young aliens from other worlds joined in with their own unique contributions to the fun. "What are you thinking about?" Zara asked, joining him at the window. She was now the Empress of the Viridian Empire, having taken the throne when her father decided to retire and spend his time studying human philosophy. "I was thinking about how strange life can be," Jake said, putting his arm around his wife. "A year ago, you thought humans were barely intelligent animals. Now look where we are." Zara smiled and placed her hand on her rounded belly. Their daughter would be born in a few months, the first human Viridian hybrid ever created. Medical scans showed that the child would have remarkable abilities, combining human creativity with Viridian telepathic gifts. "She will grow up in a galaxy where cooperation is valued more than conquest," Zara said, "where different ways of thinking are seen as strengths, not weaknesses." Jake nodded. "And it all started with a puzzle box and a foolish wager." "Not foolish," Zara corrected gently. "Necessary. Sometimes the universe has to force us to see what we are too stubborn to notice on our own." They stood together watching the children play, thinking about the future they were building together. In the distance, ships from dozens of worlds came, and went from the station carrying students, scientists, artists, and diplomats who were all part of the new age of cooperation. The galaxy was changing, one friendship at a time. And at the center of it all was a human captain and an alien princess who had learned that love was not about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone who made you want to become better than you were. As the station's artificial sun set over the park, Jake and Zara watched their daughter kick inside Zara's belly, as if she was eager to join the wonderful, chaotic, beautiful universe that was waiting for her. "What should we name her?" Jake asked. Zara thought for a moment. "Hope," she said finally. "We should name her Hope." Jake smiled. It was a perfect name for a child who would represent the future of two worlds learning to become one. As they walked home together through corridors filled with beings from across the galaxy, Jake realized that sometimes the